In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how the decoder in this Atlas GP7 is set up to act in a much more realistic manner than stock programming does. The decoder itself is a TCS WOW 121 version 3 on a motherboard, and the lighting, for what it's worth, are SMT LEDs mounted in the headlight cavities. The engine is set up with rather extreme settings for momentum, and the functions are remapped so that the manual control can have an effect on the way the decoder behaves. The first tab is the motor. The acceleration 1 rate is set to 123 and the deceleration rate is set to 254. These settings do appear to supersede the settings in the momentum tab, but that's no matter. The next tab is sound levels, and in this one the important setting is the notch 1 transition speed step. It is set to 1. The rest of the tabs are somewhat of a linear curve, and it really doesn't matter much for these. You can set them to whatever they work well with for your particular engine. The next tab is momentum, and these settings would require a cheat sheet, so the only ones that matter here are the settings for switch mode. However, the way this decoder is set up, it's not really necessary. What you see in the momentum ones are the two settings for switch mode and for mainline mode. The switch mode settings are very low and the mainline mode ones are very high. The thing is that the motor tab settings tend to supersede these. The brake tab is the one that's really interesting. The rates are a nice linear setup, and what's of note here is that the effect is cumulative. Press the button once and the engine spools to idle, and the brakes are put on. If the start speed is above 7, then the speed drops to 7 on a scale of 255, then the noise starts. Each push of the brake button takes the effect to the value listed. Under most switching conditions, where the throttle is not higher than, say, 10, you'd only have to push the brake button once, maybe twice. And I just noted in the picture that auto notch down is not checked off. Oops. The sound function is where you put it all together. The 4 keys that I used for this setup are key 4, which is notch up 1, key 5, which is notch down 1. That's the RPM of the prime mover. Key number 6 is switching / mainline momentum, and key 7 is brake squeal. By attaching brake squeal to a key, you activate the ability to use this function. There's one other interesting thing that shows up here, keys 4 and 5. These decoders work on a last command kind of addressing. So let's say that you have a large cut of cars that you've hooked up. You turn the throttle knob to 10, and after the air is released, the prime mover ramps to notch 1. Then the engine starts to move. In the real world, the engine would move until it started to load up, and the engineer would increase the throttle, but the speed would not necessarily increase. We can simulate this by pressing key 4, and the prime mover will increase to notch 2, and so on and so forth, but the speed will not increase. This works for both increase and decrease. If you turn the throttle knob up or down, its setting will be transmitted to the decoder and will respond to that input. As mentioned before, if you press key 7, the throttle will return to idle, and the engine will stop moving. Of note is that the throttle knob may still be set to 10 or show it's set to 10. Here's a couple of video clips of this process in action. Okay, so what's going to happen here is the engine is set to go in reverse. Right now the brakes were set when it stopped, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. You move the throttle knob to about 10, which allows the prime mover to ramp up to notch 1, and the momentum will prevent the engine from moving right away. We'll demonstrate. Then the throttle's moved back to 0. The engine will keep going. The prime mover ramps down, and when you press 7, the brakes kick in and it stops. Because the brakes were set, the brakes will release when the throttle knob is turned, like this. and the engine will stop when you put the brakes on. Here's how this works. Hope this video helps you run your engines in a more prototypical manner. If you like it, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.